Hey guys, tonight we're slipping through the carved gates of the Forbidden City, where the air smells faintly of camphor wood, roasted duck, and power. The sun's already down, and the flicker of hundreds of red glass lanterns makes the stone corridors ripple like water. You follow the hush of silk slippers on polished floors, and the deeper you go, the stranger everything gets. Outside, Beijing slumbers in quiet cold, but inside the palace, heat rises off braziers filled with sandalwood coals. Gold-threaded curtains twitch as someone scurries behind them. Maybe a servant, maybe someone you really don't want to owe a favour to. You're not exactly sure why you were invited, which is how most of the guests feel. But you've shown up anyway, because in the Ming Dynasty, refusing an imperial banquet is not great for your career. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and your local time down in the comments. I love seeing how far this sleepy little history family reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step through the final gate and the world opens. A colonnade of red lacquer pillars leads into the Hall of Supreme Harmony, or at least one of its dining annexes repurposed tonight into an impossible feastscape. This isn't some chill dinner party. This is a ritual, a performance, and a hierarchy map you have to decode, while also figuring out if you're allowed to eat that peacock. You're handed a scroll, not to read, it's a place card, but it's as long as your arm and densely written in brush characters, because your position in this dinner isn't just about where you sit, it's about when you bow, how many sips you take, and whether or not you're allowed to look at the emperor's dish before he touches it. Spoiler, you're not. Even the torches obey protocol. They're spaced in exact proportions, 9 feet apart, honouring the sacred number of the Son of Heaven. Gold and blue panels line the high ceiling, painted with dragons twisting around heavenly spheres, and you do your best not to tilt your head too far back, because showing the bottom of your chin in some circles is considered deeply uncultured. As you make your way to the table, you pass servants kneeling on silk mats, holding lacquer trays as still as statues. One of them blinks and you jump. Another is holding a carved ivory platter of candied kumquats arranged to look like a snow-covered peach orchard. It's beautiful. It's definitely not for you. You keep walking. Banquets like these weren't just about food. They were theatres of power. The Ming Dynasty, especially under emperors like Yongle and Xuande, turned them into choreographed spectacles. Think Broadway meets Michelin star anxiety. They weren't held every week, but when they were, they could last hours, or days. And yes, some attendees brought spare shoes. A court musician plucks a soft chord from a guqin in the corner. That's your cue. The doors are closing. Late arrivals are frowned upon, and by frowned upon, we mean there's a whole scroll somewhere listing people who once showed up 5 minutes late and were never heard from again. You slide into the room. The temperature changes slightly as you pass under the hall's arch. You don't know if it's the heat of the charcoal pits or just the gravity of the space. The smell of incense, likely agar wood, imported at great cost, drifts faintly in the air. You don't sneeze. Good start. The table is a long lacquered serpent, winding through the hall in a sort of squared-off spiral. It's shaped like the character for eternity. Classic. No round tables here. Circles imply equality. That definitely wasn't the Ming vibe. You spot your seat marked by your scroll and a tiny jade chopstick rest shaped like a sleeping crane. Cute. You don't sit yet. That's the first rule. No one sits until the signal is given, usually a discreet nod from a eunuch standing beside a curtain, who got the nod from someone else, who got a nod from someone even higher up the nod chain. Historians still argue whether that system worked flawlessly, or created its own chaos of nod misfires that got people demoted. You stand there awkwardly, shifting weight between your feet. The robe you were given to wear is stunning, crimson silk with embroidered plum blossoms, but it's also about 6 degrees too tight in the shoulders. You don't dare tug at it. A man across from you is already sweating through his collar. You feel a little better. Then the music pauses. A slow, deliberate strum. That's it. Everyone lowers onto their cushions at once, knees folding, hands aligned. The hall lets out a collective breath like an animal settling. The banquet is beginning. And that's when the fear kicks in. Because you just realised you don't know what half the dishes are going to be, and worse, you don't know which ones you're supposed to pretend to like. Already trays are gliding across the room, brought in on long bamboo poles balanced across attendants' shoulders. They move like synchronized birds, keeping pace with one another as they set down the first wave of offerings, not plates. Offerings. You recognize almost nothing. There's a platter of golden jelly shaped like a phoenix egg, a pyramid of steamed buns dyed blue with gardenia flowers, a smoked rabbit arranged in the form of a galloping horse, and something that looks suspiciously like a tiny caramelized turtle. It smells amazing and terrifying, and as your chopsticks hover just an inch off the plate, everyone else is doing the same, waiting, watching. Welcome to the banquet. The moment hangs there, soft, fragrant, and slightly damp from all the nervous breathing, until a single bell chimes. Not loud, barely more than a ting behind a curtain. But that's your cue. You and about 80 other guests move as one. Chopsticks lower like cranes landing in slow motion. The feast has begun. You go for a safe-looking dumpling first. It's translucent, shaped like a magnolia blossom, and vaguely reassuring. Inside, mushrooms, shrimp, and... wait, is that ginkgo nut? It is. The texture is slightly chewy, slightly slimy, and somehow slightly disappointing. But you nod politely as if it's changed your life. Then you realize you've made a mistake. You sat down, 3 inches too early. Your cushion, while beautiful, embroidered with tiny cranes and gold thread, is just a hair's breadth ahead of the proper alignment line marked discreetly on the mat. A servant glides by, and with the grace of a falling feather nudges your elbow. The gesture is barely visible, but the message is crystal clear. Scoot back, peasant, you shift. No one laughs, but you swear someone smirks behind their fan. A small child 2 seats down raises an eyebrow so dramatically that it might be permanently stuck. You nod and smile back, trying to pretend it was an intentional yoga pose. The second course is already arriving. This one's a soup. Not just any soup, lotus and wild duck, simmered for 6 hours and ladled into tiny porcelain bowls hand-painted with mountain scenes. It's clear, delicate, and hot enough to incinerate your tongue if you get too excited. You sip cautiously. Across the hall, a scholar official sneezes into his sleeve and immediately covers it by launching into a quote from Confucius. Smooth. Nobody reacts. Maybe that was protocol. You make a mental note. Next time you sneeze, be profound about it. There's a quiet buzz now, but no one's speaking freely yet. That would be rude. The meal must build in intensity, like a tea ceremony or a slowly unravelling riddle. Ming banquets weren't wild dinner parties. They were operas. You weren't just eating. You were performing respect, submission, intelligence, and refined palate, all at the same time. What looks like a tower of tofu arrives next, garnished with edible gold and slivers of citrus peel. It wobbles just slightly as it's set down, like it knows it doesn't belong here. You prod it carefully. The flavour is surprising. Earthy, sweet, with a hint of fermented bean paste that makes your tongue do a double take. It's the kind of taste that grows on you after, say, 6 years of mandatory palace banquets. Historians still argue whether these early courses were meant to please or test. Was the food selected for harmony, for elegance, or to weed out people who made the fatal mistake of grimacing at a salted duck tongue? Next to you, a minor court official does exactly that. The flicker of discomfort on his face is so brief, it might be mistaken for gas. But one of the servers sees it. You know this because the server vanishes a second later behind a curtain, and you're pretty sure that man is never getting promoted again. You move to the fourth dish, a delicate arrangement of radishes carved into cranes flying over a bed of pickled plum paste. The presentation is stunning. The flavour is complicated. You smile anyway. You're learning. The emperor's not here yet. You'd think that would be terrifying, and it is. But it's also just how it works. The emperor appears when he's ready, sometimes near the end of the meal, sometimes not at all. His physical presence isn't required to dominate the room. His invisible weight hangs over every gesture, every taste, every polite silence. Still, you can feel the tension growing. The conversations are beginning to bubble just a little louder. 2 scholars on your left are debating the merits of a poem that neither of them actually wrote. A merchant down the row claims he's seen a dish prepared with phoenix meat, but then winks. So, maybe he just means peacock, or maybe he's lying entirely. That happens here too. You accidentally drop your chopsticks. A gasp from somewhere nearby. A maid appears out of nowhere and replaces them with a fresh pair. this time carved from sandalwood and scented with orange blossom. You thank her with a nod and a grateful smile, but internally you're spiraling, because once again, you've broken a rule. Dropping chopsticks is bad luck. Depending on which source you read, it either signifies disrespect, clumsiness, or the arrival of bad spirits. You do your best to recover. You pick up a turnip moonslice and chew with intense thoughtfulness, as if reflecting on the Tao. No one comments. That's probably worse. Then, the room changes. No trumpets, no gongs. But suddenly the very air feels heavier. Attendants line the corridor. They bow in waves. A figure appears behind the gold thread curtain at the end of the hall. The Emperor. You freeze. He steps forward, slowly, like someone who knows time belongs to him. His robe is a cascade of red, gold, and black. Dragon motifs swirl across his sleeves as though alive. His face is unreadable, a mask of serenity with just a dash of boredom. You don't look at him directly. That's rule number 72. Everyone bows again, this time deeper. You feel your spine curve into the floor. When you rise, he's seated at his elevated table, which is shorter than everyone else's, but higher symbolically. Nothing served to him is shared with others. His dishes are created by a separate kitchen, guarded, tasted, and sealed. You realize with growing dread that soon you might be asked to toast him. You sip some tea, slowly. Maybe if you appear very small and thoughtful, no one will notice you. Spoiler, they notice everything. The Emperor lifts his cup, that's all it takes. A single, effortless motion. Ceramic tilted precisely 15 degrees, and the room follows in perfect imitation. It's not just flattery, it's self-preservation. You raise your own teacup, careful not to sip before he does. This isn't about thirst, it's about rhythm. Then he drinks. The collective sip that follows sounds like a ripple of rain on silk. Everyone lowers their cups at slightly different times, which is a relief. It means there's some wiggle room. You make a mental note, half beat behind the Emperor, safe. Now the real food begins. The appetizers, as it turns out, were just the welcome mat. And the welcome mat included duck tongues, pickled bamboo hearts, and jellied deer marrow. So you're understandably nervous when the next wave of dishes arrives, steaming and shimmering under gold-lacquered domes. First up, gold leaf duck, not metaphorical. It is, in fact, an entire roast duck covered in real gold. The skin has been lacquered with honey, vinegar, and maltose syrup, slow roasted until it shatters under the chopsticks. It glistens like an edible statue of wealth. A slice is placed onto your plate by a server who doesn't make eye contact. That's deliberate. It keeps things from getting personal. You take a bite. Crunch, salt, sweet, smoke. The meat practically sighs on your tongue. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're now asking yourself, how much gold is too much gold? Across the hall, someone sneezes mid-chew and chokes slightly. No one reacts. You suspect that's not because it's polite to ignore, but because reacting would imply the Emperor's boring, and frankly that's treason adjacent. Next comes lotus root soup, except this one's floating with something called snow frog jelly. You pause. Snow frog, as in frogs, from snowy places. You glance discreetly at your neighbour's bowl. Yep, same translucent, slightly wobbling cubes nestled among lotus petals like sea creatures in a dream. You sip. The taste is neutral, almost like unsalted hope. Snow frog jelly, by the way, is not a joke. It's the dried, fatty tissue from around the fallopian tubes of a certain frog species. Highly prized, said to be good for the skin, and yes, it's slippery going down. One of the ministers near the head table sneezes too, but his timing is perfect, right as a musical trill echoes from a nearby peeper. So it blends. You admire the technique. The Emperor speaks, not loudly, just a few words to the Grand Secretary seated 2 cushions away. A ripple of low laughter follows, despite the fact that none of you heard what he said. You laugh too. Because if the Son of Heaven chuckles, you chuckle. A tray glides past, bearing carved radishes shaped like cranes flying through a peppercorn cloud. You're starting to see a pattern. Every dish is metaphor. The duck wasn't just duck, it's prosperity. The frogs, vitality. The cranes, long life. The symbolism here is more layered than an onion stuffed with 9 types of meat, which, yes, is another course later. Historians still argue whether Ming banquet dishes were truly crafted for flavour or if meaning outweighed taste. One Qing critic, writing later of course, mocked Ming menus as poetry with indigestion. Then comes bear paw. No, seriously, actual bear paw. A delicacy so rare that even some emperors refused it out of moral qualms. But tonight's host apparently is feeling traditional. It arrives in a bronze basin braised with yellow wine and abalone. The meat is gelatinous and rich. If you can get past the mental image of Winnie the Pooh losing a limb, you chew slowly, just one bite. Everyone else does the same, except the eunuch behind you who audibly gulps at the smell. You don't turn around. Someone murmurs a verse. The bear, though fierce, yields at the feast, and a few guests nod like it's the first time they've ever heard that line. It's not. At this point, the courses are coming in waves so fast you begin to lose track. Scallops glazed with osmanthus syrup, goose tongue rolls, jellyfish salad tossed with plum wine. Your palate is experiencing a full spectrum of flavours: umami, sour, earthy, smoky, metallic, and something suspiciously like soap, but you smile through it. Quirky side note, one of the dishes is a mock dragon egg, which turns out to be a boiled goose egg filled with minced pork, more goose, and dyed lotus seeds. It's served on a nest of spun sugar, looks delightful, tastes very warm. You try to slow down, not because you're full, though you are, but because rushing is a cardinal sin. Eating too fast implies greed. Too slow suggests disdain. Every motion is part of your social script. And the emperor? He hasn't touched the bear paw. You wonder if that means anything. It probably does. Or maybe he's just not in the mood for paws tonight. Hard to say. The emperor is a riddle wrapped in a robe, seated on a throne that might actually be a symbolic mountain. You pretend not to care. Suddenly a small commotion. A sauce tester, one of the unlucky souls whose job it is to sample imperial dishes before the emperor does, lets out a faint groan and slumps. The hall freezes. 2 guards appear instantly, dragging the man behind a silk partition. Everyone continues eating. This isn't your first sauce tester collapse, probably won't be the last. Most aren't poisoned, they just faint from pressure, dehydration, or the sheer terror of their job. But nobody asks. The performance must go on. You reach for the next dish and realise your jade chopsticks are now slick with condensation. You wipe them discreetly on the cloth napkin that you're not sure you're allowed to use. It's embroidered with gold thread bamboo, which might mean it's ceremonial, or just expensive. Either way, it's too late now. You take another bite, something sweet and citrusy, wrapped in a fish skin lattice, and smile faintly as it hits your tongue. The emperor leans back. Another sip of tea. The music pauses. Everyone freezes. You sense the rhythm of the night changing again, like a long exhale. He might speak soon, or he might test your poetry skills. You begin mentally composing a line about moonlight and duck fat, just in case. The room stills as the emperor places his teacup on a tiny rosewood stand. It's an elegant movement, subtle, slow, decisive. One of those gestures that tells you something important is about to happen, or maybe not. That's the game. You straighten your posture. At the far end of the hall, a eunuch steps forward and reads out a short poem. His voice is soft, melodic, rehearsed to the syllable. It references plum blossoms blooming in winter, the silence of falling snow, and the harmony of heaven and earth. Nobody breathes too loudly while it's happening. Then the emperor smiles. The reaction is immediate. Ripples of relief move across the faces in the hall like light across water. A low murmur of appreciation follows. Someone dabs their forehead. Someone else exhales a little too loudly and gets elbowed by a neighbour. And then, finally, he speaks. A single sentence. Let us savour the joy of the mountain and stream. Everyone nods as if it's both profound and personally meaningful. And you? You act like this is exactly the moment you were waiting for. Because you've read the ancient court manual, or at least skimmed it. And you know that when the emperor offers poetic reflection, you're supposed to respond in kind. Emotionally, not verbally. Heaven forbid you speak uninvited. Your attention is dragged away by the gentle arrival of yet another dish. This one is a steamed fish, served whole, garnished with goji berries and a sauce that smells faintly like apricot and aged vinegar. Its eye stares up at you, a little too intently. You poke it. It winks. No, wait. That was just the oil catching the torchlight. You hope. As the courses continue, your stress levels begin to shift. You're less panicked about the food and more worried about the social landmines. For instance, how many sips of wine are appropriate after a toast? Answer: 1 or 3, or just enough to show gratitude but not enough to imply drunkenness. Historians still argue over the exact rule. You glance toward the centre of the hall. The emperor remains serene, but his eyes are scanning. He's not eating much, but he's watching. Now comes the infamous robe check. See, tonight you're wearing a court robe provided for guests. You were told it's crimson silk with plum blossom embroidery. Auspicious, subtle, appropriate. You were told wrong. It's similar to the one worn by one of the upper ministers, which means you're now fashion matching someone 20 ranks above you. And that is bad. Not execution bad, but never eat near the emperor again bad. You try to shrink into your cushion. A eunuch approaches with a smile just a little too tight. He adjusts your collar, just a hair. It's a silent warning. We see you. Please don't make it worse. Then comes the round of ritual toasts. An official at the far end stands, lifts a small porcelain cup, and recites a 4-line couplet about moonlight and enduring loyalty. The toast ends with a bow in the emperor's direction, deep and elegant. You are going to have to do one of these. Your stomach knots. Because the thing is, this toast isn't just about rhyming. It's about tone, form, rhythm, metaphor, and a kind of poetic humility that's incredibly hard to fake when you've just eaten jellyfish salad and your knees are asleep. Still, it's coming. Until then, you watch. Some toasts are short and elegant, others overly flowery. One merchant compares the emperor to the golden crane who brings morning dew to the petals of state. That one gets a polite nod. Another official, clearly a little too confident, offers a 6-line monstrosity that references fish leaping through the jade canal of justice. That one receives silence. Your turn. You rise slowly. Knees crack. You pretend that's part of the performance. You hold your cup, glance respectfully toward the imperial seat and begin. On this night of warm lanterns, may peace rise like fragrant steam. Your wisdom steers the banquet boat and spares us from the soup. A pause, a chuckle from somewhere. Not the emperor, but someone near him. Maybe even a noblewoman hidden behind a painted fan. You sit back down. That's a win. You're not getting exiled tonight. Another wave of food arrives. This time, tiny eel fillets wrapped in lotus leaves, steamed with ginger and rice wine. They look like miniature scrolls, and they melt like poetry on your tongue. You're beginning to understand why some courtiers called these banquets tastings of the cosmos. Also, indigestion traps. The emperor has not spoken again, but his presence is enough. You find yourself checking his posture every time you lift your chopsticks, just to make sure you're not eating too fast. His calm, composed demeanour is both soothing and nerve-shredding. And then he rises. Not fully, just shifts. But that movement triggers an avalanche of reactions. Cups pause mid-air. A flute player stops mid-note. Someone drops a bun. You freeze. He gestures. And from behind a curtain, a new dish is brought forward on a black lacquer tray adorned with mother-of-pearl inlay. The servers bow low and the dome is lifted with silent ceremony. It's a dish you've heard rumours about. Stuffed lychee quail. The bird is deboned, reassembled, and stuffed with minced shrimp, chestnut, lychee flesh, and a reduction of plum wine. Its skin has been crisped, then brushed with sugar to form a shiny glaze. It looks like something out of a dream. A portion is set before you. You wait. Only when the emperor takes a bite do you dare, and it's divine. The sweetness, the tang, the faint iron of the quail, it all sings together. You consider writing a second toast just for this dish. At that moment you realise, no one is really full. You've had 20 courses, but everything's so refined, portioned and symbolic, you could honestly eat another 20, which is good, because they're still coming. You lean back slightly, the silk cushion sighing under your weight, and glance at the golden lanterns. They sway just faintly, casting shadows that look like dragons dancing on the walls. There's something magical about it. Sure, it's intimidating and strange and slightly terrifying, but it's also beautiful. In this room, the entire empire is condensed into a single meal, a ritual of power, poetry, and taste. And you're still alive, so far. You've made it past the first full round. That alone is a quiet triumph. No food dropped, no poetry flubbed, no accidental eye contact with the Emperor. Your robe scandal has been gently corrected. You're still in the game. But now it gets trickier. Because it's not about the food anymore. It's about you, your reactions, your timing, your ability to read the invisible dance of status cues happening around you like a slow-motion chess match on velvet cushions. The next course arrives. Fish carved into a chrysanthemum, soaked in a tart mandarin glaze garnished with crushed pine nuts. It's gorgeous, but you barely register the flavour. You're too busy watching how the scholar 2 cushions away reacts. He closes his eyes after chewing, then nods just once, the appropriate amount of appreciation. You copy him, but reduce the nod to half height. He outranks you. Probably. You're learning. The man beside you clears his throat too loudly after a swallow of soup. Everyone pretends not to notice, but the air around him tightens. This banquet is silent judgment disguised as polite chewing. It wasn't always this tense. During early Ming reigns, especially under the Hongwu Emperor, court dining was simpler, ceremonial, yes, but often austere. Hongwu came from humble roots and despised waste. But after his death, the tables got longer, literally. By the Yongle Emperor's reign, everything escalated. Flavors, scale, ritual, and rules. He expanded the empire and the kitchen, sometimes simultaneously. One official claimed there were 2,000 recipes catalogued for imperial banquets alone. Another said you could eat something different every night for 6 years and still not repeat a dish. You believe it. Now, the 5th round arrives. Miniature pork balls, marinated in fermented bean paste and wrapped in fragrant leaves. The leaves have been painted with edible ink, calligraphy characters that vanish under steam, like a secret poem just for your tongue. You eat it whole. Someone coughs, soft but pointed. You immediately question whether you were supposed to bite it in half. This is your life now. The Emperor hasn't spoken in a while, which is, oddly, more stressful than when he was talking. His silence feels like a waiting storm cloud, soft and still, but full of judgment. You glance at his table. He lifts his chopsticks, then pauses. Everyone freezes. He gestures to an attendant who rushes to swap out a dish. Maybe it was undercooked. Maybe it contained a seasonal ingredient that conflicted with the lunar calendar. Maybe he just didn't like the plate's vibe. Hard to say. That one movement has consequences. Somewhere in a side kitchen, a cook is probably sweating through 5 layers of robe, calculating whether this will cost him a fingertip or just a few sleepless nights. Possibly both. You go back to your soup. It's pear blossom and black chicken. Light, sweet, slightly floral. You'd enjoy it more if your thighs weren't going numb from kneeling. You shift discreetly. The woman across from you smirks. Then, just as quickly, her expression smooths back into blank serenity. She's probably a minor princess or the wife of a high-ranking official. Her robe is stunning, embroidered with flying bats and peaches, symbols of long life and fortune. You offer a small nod of admiration. She raises her cup in return. You just survived your first successful social exchange of the night. The relief nearly makes you weep. Now comes the pickled tear. It's not an official name, but it should be. These dishes are tiny, intense, and meant to refresh the palate between richer courses. In reality, they taste like aggressive barnyard therapy. You try a sliver of pickled garlic flour soaked in sour plum wine. It's spicy, acidic, and smells like regret. You keep a straight face. Then a preserved kumquat that tastes like someone dared to ferment sunlight. Then pickled snake. Tiny, coiled, black. No sauce. Just pure briny crunch. You chew very slowly, very quietly, and remind yourself that this is considered a treat. Maybe even a compliment. Quirky fact, some banquets included edible messages hidden in these palate cleansers. A strip of tofu skin might contain a blessing, or a veiled insult, or, in one infamous case, a haiku so bad the recipient refused dessert out of shame. You glance under your next leaf. Blank, probably for the best. Now the music shifts again. Low, melancholic flutes played in a minor key. A court singer begins a song, her voice high and tremulous, drifting through the air like mist. The lyrics are about a crane mourning the moon. It's haunting and oddly appropriate, because this is the judgment course, not official, of course. But culturally, this moment, about 2/3 into the banquet, is when things get spicy. Not literally, emotionally. This is when people start measuring each other. The food becomes background, the glances sharpen, conversations begin in earnest, quiet ones, careful ones, the kinds of exchanges that contain compliments with knife edges and jokes that only work if everyone agrees not to laugh too hard. Someone 2 seats away mentions a recent flood in the south, another counters with a toast to the Emperor's swift response. You sense the tension. It's not just banter. These words could end up in a court report or a prison diary. Historians still argue whether the Ming banquets functioned as shadow tribunals. Were promotions decided by how well you held your wine? Did exile hinge on your inability to fake laugh at a prince's pun? You sip your tea and pretend not to think about it. Then comes a dish so absurdly opulent it knocks the breath out of you. It's a soup served in a carved crystal bowl, filled with swan meat, fish maw and longan fruit. The broth shimmers with saffron. On top, a single floating flower, sculpted from radish and gold foil. This soup probably cost more than your house. You eat it in reverent silence, and when you finish, you gently set the bowl down with both hands, fingertips barely touching the lacquer tray, the same way you'd handle a sleeping baby, or a live grenade. Then you exhale, 1 more course down, 500 rules still to go. You're full. No, not the kind of full where you lean back and sigh, satisfied. This is ceremonial fullness, the type that nestles somewhere between physical bloating and spiritual overstimulation. But there's no sign the banquet is slowing. In fact, things are starting to pick up. A gong rings once, soft, deep, intentional. And then, the entertainment begins. From behind an embroidered screen, performers emerge in a slow, swaying line. Their robes are brilliant, silk dyed in shades of lapis, gold and crimson, with peacock feather fans folded delicately in each hand. They bow in a ripple. And then the music shifts. First come the musicians, a guzheng player seated cross-legged on a raised dais, plucking out a melody that sounds like water dripping through bamboo. A flutist joins in, weaving high, airy notes through the haze of incense. The sound fills the hall, light but unignorable. Then, mimes. Yes, mimes. You weren't expecting this. No one ever expects the mimes. 3 performers dressed as monkeys enter and begin acting out a scene involving a lost court slipper, an enraged chef, and what may or may not be a depiction of the Minister of Rights. The room carefully chuckles, just enough to show enjoyment, not so much that anyone thinks they're laughing at something that might be sacred. The Emperor watches, expressionless. Half the room is watching him watching them. You're staring at the goose. Because while the entertainment plays out at one end of the hall, another dish has arrived at yours. A roast goose sculpted, no exaggeration, into the shape of a peony blossom. The skin has been tinted subtly with beet juice and squid ink to create the gradient of petal hues. It's surreal. And beneath the artistry, sweet garlic glaze. The scent hits you like a memory from a dream you never had. You carve a slice. The meat peels away in layers, soft and rich, the flavour blooming like the flower it resembles. Across the table, someone quietly drops a compliment. The plum wine hasn't tasted this aged in years. Another replies, yes, the last time was during the Eclipse Festival. Code. It's all code. Are they talking about the wine, or the minister who just got reassigned to the frontier? Historians still argue whether these casual remarks were actually loaded political references. Banquets weren't just feasts, they were auditions, alliances, traps. It's like musical chairs, but instead of losing a seat, you lose a governorship. Meanwhile, the mimes have disappeared, and now dancers take the stage. 6 women in shimmering robes move in perfect, unblinking symmetry. They glide like windblown leaves across the polished floor. Each movement is deliberate, down to the angle of a wrist or the bend of a pinky. You find yourself holding your breath. One dancer performs a slow turn, her sleeve flaring open to reveal a single red silk flower, which she places at the foot of the Emperor's table. Symbolism alert. A red flower during a banquet often suggests prosperity for the dynasty, or, depending on context, a plea for mercy. The Emperor gives no reaction, which means nothing, or everything. Now, a round of fruit is passed out. Fruit in the middle of the meal? Yes, but not just any fruit. Each one is carved. Your lychee is peeled and reassembled like a blossom. The melon has been shaped into a miniature pagoda. Even your grapes have tiny faces scratched into them, smiling, if slightly unnerving. Then comes the mystery course. It's not on the menu. Not that you've seen the menu, of course. But this dish wasn't announced. It just arrives, on a dark lacquer tray covered in a silver dome. When the dome is lifted, smoke spills out like a magician's trick. Inside, 2 meatballs. Just 2. Perfectly round, glistening, placed on opposite ends of the plate like yin and yang. You wait. The person to your right gives you a side glance, then uses his chopsticks to lift one. You follow suit. The flavour, rich, familiar, like pork, but with a strange aftertaste, spicy, peppery, faintly medicinal. Someone whispers, "Tiger?" You pause mid-chew. Tiger meat was once rumoured to be served at elite tables, usually illegally and always ceremonially, but it's more likely this is spiced venison or perhaps wild boar, both common enough in the imperial hunt. Still, the doubt lingers. What is this? You finish it anyway. Because not finishing it? That's worse. The next course arrives quickly to distract you. Sweet potato cakes, shaped like coins, fried crisp and drizzled with osmanthus syrup. You pop one into your mouth. It's warm, soft, slightly chewy. You feel, for a fleeting moment, safe. But then come the meat sculptures. Yes, you read that right. A large tray is wheeled out, actually wheeled on hidden casters, and atop it stands a full-scale recreation of the Temple of Heaven, made entirely of meat. The walls are sausage casings. The pillars? Smoked beef sticks. The roof? Glazed duckskin shingles. You stare. Everyone stares. This is not meant to be eaten. This is art. Food art. And also a message. The kitchen staff knows what they're doing, and they're reminding you. You nod in reverence. A nearby eunuch leans in to murmur, "The last banquet featured a jade rabbit carved from shrimp paste." Of course it did. You hear a clink. Someone's cup has run dry. Immediately a servant is there, refilling it from a teapot shaped like a lotus bud. You hold your own cup slightly to the side, not empty yet, but low. A servant bows and pours, silent as mist. The wine has grown sweeter, or maybe you've just surrendered to it. The air now smells of sandalwood, plum blossom, and roasted game. Music continues, slow and hypnotic. Somewhere in the back of the hall, a parrot calls out a phrase, "Blessings rise like steam," which earns a small scattered laugh. Trained parrots were a common fixture at elite banquets. They repeated poems, toasts, occasionally gossip. One bird, according to a 15th century account, famously outed a treasonous affair by mimicking a forbidden nickname. That banquet ended with fewer guests than it began with. You glance at tonight's parrot. It just fluffs its feathers and yawns. Lucky bird. Then the flutist changes key again. The music grows brighter, livelier, like a gentle signal. The banquet is shifting. You're entering the middle arc. Still hungry? It doesn't matter. The food's going to keep coming. And now everyone starts speaking a bit louder. This is where alliances are made. Or broken. And you? You take another sip of wine, adjust your cushion, and prepare to survive the next course of theatre. You take another careful sip of wine. Chrysanthemum this time, cooled and poured from a jade-handled vessel that probably cost more than your entire street back home, and you realise your fingers are slightly trembling. Not from fear, surprisingly. From fatigue. Holding your chopsticks like a noble for hours takes a toll, and not just any chopsticks. Yours are jade. A gift, supposedly. Or a test. Jade chopsticks are beautiful, smooth, and prestigious. They are also infamously hard to use, slippery, weighty, slightly uneven in temperature because of how they hold the ambient chill of the room. You've dropped 3 things so far but caught 2. You're counting it as a win. The man to your left, an older gentleman with a wispy beard and a mole shaped like a comma, has bamboo. Humble, practical, grippy. You envy him. But the jade means something. It means you're being watched. You pick up a slice of pear-glazed venison with all the grace of a puppeteer with stiff strings. It flops slightly but lands intact on your plate. You smile serenely and pretend that was intentional. Chopsticks, in Ming court banquets, weren't just tools, they were symbols. Jade signified wealth, status, or favour. Gold was rare and often reserved for royalty. Bamboo was practical. Ivory was common among scholars. But you've been handed jade, which says, "Show us what you've got." You chew slowly. The venison is exquisite, tender, sweet, and just a little gamey, balanced by the crispness of the accompanying pickled lotus stem. Quirky tidbit. There were written etiquette scrolls devoted entirely to chopstick handling, angling your chopsticks too vertically, aggressive, resting them across your bowl, funerary, tapping them together, essentially asking to be disowned. And yet, no one tells you the rules up front. You're supposed to know, or at least fake it with enough dignity that no one has to correct you in public. You reach for a turnip petal. It squirts, just a tiny splash of gingered brine. It lands on the silk of your sleeve, your crimson silk sleeve with the already borderline controversial embroidery, and you instinctively flinch. The servant at your elbow doesn't miss a beat. With the elegance of a swooping crane, she produces a delicate cloth, bows, and dabs the stain in one fluid motion. No words, no judgment. You mouth a silent thank you and stare at your chopsticks like they've betrayed you. Across the table, someone begins a soft recitation, a toast, maybe, or a spontaneous poem about the flavour of plum blossom soup. You catch just a phrase, like memories dissolving in winter rain, and someone responds with a subtle applause of fingernails tapping porcelain. The whole hall is a web of coded messages, and you're the spider with one broken leg pretending you know where all the strands lead. Now a new course arrives. Steamed abalone nestled inside a sculpted taro blossom. The abalone is delicately flavoured with Shaoxing wine and something floral. Maybe rose. You can't tell. The texture is firm but tender, like velvet that's been taught etiquette. You manage to eat it cleanly. No slips, no splashes. You even catch someone nodding approvingly from 3 seats down. Maybe it was meant for someone else, but you'll take it. The emperor, meanwhile, hasn't touched his jade chopsticks in 5 minutes. He's sipping wine, listening to a conversation at his left and making no expressions whatsoever. This is where it gets dangerous, because the longer he stays silent, the more the room fills with subtle performances, everyone trying to be noticed, without trying to be noticed. It's like a talent show with the lights dimmed and the judges hidden behind curtains. Someone nearby, probably a literary official, has folded his napkin into a shape that looks suspiciously like a mountain. You don't know if it's an accident or a reference to the emperor's recent poetry. Either way, it earns a murmur of interest. Another man lifts his cup and, before drinking, taps the table twice with 2 fingers. It's a southern custom, an unspoken thank you gesture, often used for superiors. But it's subtle, and it catches the eye of a nearby eunuch. You decide not to copy it. You're not from the south. It might look like overreaching. Your next dish is a small bundle of chrysanthemum petals filled with crab meat and pine nuts, wrapped in rice paper and steamed in bamboo. The flavour is delicate, almost elusive, like eating the idea of a flower. And that's when the silent server places something new in front of you. Not food, a box. It's no larger than a chessboard, lacquered black with a red phoenix seal on top. You've heard of this, the courtesy game. Sometimes, a guest is given a surprise puzzle or task during a banquet, an intellectual challenge, a riddle, a poetic prompt, to demonstrate their grace under pressure. You open it carefully. Inside, a fan, blank, white silk, a calligraphy brush rests beside it, a shallow dish of ink. You exhale slowly. This isn't about food anymore. It's about wit, style, artistry. You dip the brush in the ink, let the bristles soak, and begin to write. Not a poem, too risky. You write a single phrase. Beneath the plum moon, silence ripens. You fold the fan and set it back in the box. You do not smile. You do not look around. You simply bow, once, and return to your food as if nothing happened. A servant takes the box, and moments later, a tiny nod passes from the dais. From the emperor? From one of his secretaries? You don't know, but your pulse slows slightly. That was the right move. Historians still debate whether fan calligraphy was mandatory performance or spontaneous tradition. There's even a recorded instance of a general being dismissed from court after drawing stick figures. Bold, misguided. A fresh dish arrives. Glutinous rice dumplings in osmanthus syrup. Soft, warm, fragrant. You take one bite, and for a brief moment it all fades. The noise, the pressure, the endless balancing act. It's just sweet rice and warmth in your mouth. And then you look down. Your jade chopsticks are missing. They've been replaced with gold ones. You stare at the gold chopsticks. Your first instinct? Panic. Because this is not a casual upgrade. No one just swaps your jade for gold without a reason. It's either a mistake, a message, or a promotion. And all three are dangerous. Gold chopsticks mean attention. They are rare, used only by the most favoured guests or those with direct imperial recognition. A mistake seems unlikely. A warning? Possible. A test? Almost certainly. You glance around. No one else at your tier has received gold. One of the high ministers at the Emperor's table has them, a visiting Mongol envoy, and now, you. The servant who delivered them has already melted into the background. No explanation, no card, no eye contact. You pick them up. They're heavier than jade. Cool to the touch. The tips are textured in tiny grooves for better grip, which is ironic because now your hands are shaking. Just in time, another dish arrives. Tea-smoked carp in a delicate orange glaze. It's sliced thin, each piece shaped like a fish scale and arranged to resemble a swimming koi. You spear a piece with deliberate slowness. It doesn't slip. Small victories. But gold chopsticks aren't just for show. They signal status. And status in this room is radioactive. People start to notice. The man across from you raises a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. A woman further down leans slightly forward, her gaze pausing on your place setting just a second too long. You keep eating. Then the tea arrives. Not just any tea. Imperial tribute tea. It's poured from a celadon pot shaped like a plum blossom bud. The spout so narrow it takes 10 full seconds to fill your cup. The liquid is pale green, faintly floral, slightly bitter, exactly as it should be. But the moment your cup is full, a servant appears again. She places a second cup beside the first. Uh-oh. 2 cups, that's not standard. You glance down, one is the tribute tea, the other has a golden tint, a whiff of ginseng. And hovering above the surface, tiny floating chrysanthemums. You know what this is. It's court tea, reserved for select guests, a subtle mark of imperial favour, or a baited hook. You're not sure which. Either way, declining it would be an insult. Accepting it might change your life. You choose the second cup. It's warm, slightly sweet, deeply earthy. You drink slowly, trying not to let the weight of the moment settle on your face. Beside you, the older official with bamboo chopsticks chuckles under his breath. Careful, he murmurs, without looking at you. It only takes 1 flower in your tea to change your career. You give him the faintest smile. It's a friendly warning. Maybe. And then, just as your nerves start to settle, the tea ritual begins. You're not sure who initiates it. One of the nobles near the dais, perhaps. But suddenly the room adjusts. Everyone sits straighter. Teacups are held in both hands. The pace slows. Because here in the Ming Dynasty, tea isn't just tea. It's language, rank, subtext. Pouring tea for someone senior to you, a gesture of humility, refilling someone's cup, friendship, or flattery, receiving tea and not touching it, disapproval. And worst of all, drinking before the Emperor sips. You sit very still. The Emperor lifts his cup. You count 2 seconds, then 3, then sip. Chrysanthemum and ginseng. Balanced, regal. The kind of flavour that reminds you you're not royalty, but you're being watched by it. Suddenly, across the room, a servant spills a cup. Not yours, not nearby. But it crashes to the floor with a sound like a small gong. All motion stops. A musician falters mid-note. The servant drops to his knees. The tea spreads across the floor like ink on parchment. The Emperor does not react. But a eunuch whispers something to a secretary, and the servant is quietly escorted from the room. No fuss, no punishment. Not tonight. But he won't be back. Everyone knows it. You go back to sipping, carefully. Historians still debate whether these tea moments were acts of grace or veiled inquisition. One wrong move, too much sugar, too little etiquette, and entire reputations could evaporate. Back at your cushion, a servant kneels beside you and whispers, "The Emperor invites your thoughts on the harmony of the meal." Oh no. This is either an enormous honour or a dangerous misunderstanding. You're supposed to say something. Graceful, short, poetic. You swallow, then murmur, each course drifts into the next like petals on a stream. The balance is luminous. The servant bows and disappears. You don't know if it was good, but you didn't babble, you didn't overpraise, and you didn't compare the Emperor to a dumpling. So, acceptable. You return to your golden chopsticks and lift a slice of ginger-roasted duck breast. A single flake of salt sparkles on the edge. You chew slowly. It's divine. If you were allowed to close your eyes and sigh, you would. But everyone is watching now. You're a name, a place, a possible contender in a game you didn't even know you entered. You take another sip of your ginseng tea. It tastes like power with a hint of floral risk. And now comes the finale of the tea ritual, the silent toast. Everyone in the room lifts their cups toward the dais. No clinking, no words, just a wave of motion, fluid as wind through grass. You follow. Your gold cup catches the candlelight. The emperor returns the gesture, barely. And then he sets his cup down. The next course is already on its way. The soft clatter of porcelain and rustle of silk signals the arrival of something different. You notice the shift before you smell it, before you even see it. The servers now wear white gloves. The dishes are smaller, stranger. Someone near the center table coughs, not out of illness, but out of surprise. You've entered the fermented curiosities stage. This is where the kitchen stops pretending to be polite. These dishes aren't designed to soothe or flatter. They're here to challenge, test your grace, measure your grit, and most of all, to entertain the emperor with your face. First up, a small porcelain shell, cupping a greyish paste that smells faintly of old books and wet rope. The eunuch behind you murmurs softly, "Fermented river crab." You've heard stories. Crabs sealed in jars, aged with rice wine, ginger, salt, and thyme. The flavour is rich, pungent, often described as an acquired scream. You lift your gold chopsticks, scoop just a bit, just enough, and bring it to your mouth. Boom. It hits your palate like a symphony of vinegar, earth, and shrimp that's been living in a wine cellar since last winter. It's sharp, slightly fizzy, and deeply, profoundly weird. You don't gag. That's the win. You even nod slightly. The trick is not to show enjoyment, but to show respect. A quiet voice across the table. Excellent mouthfeel. That person is lying. Next comes something harder to explain. A folded banana leaf, unwrapped to reveal translucent jiggling slices of what looks like pickled jellyfish, marinated in aged soybean brine, and garnished with what can only be described as a suspiciously damp flour. You chew it slowly. It tastes like sour silk, possibly sadness. And then, the infamous dish. You've heard rumours. Fish pickled in yak's tears. It arrives looking deceptively simple. Thin slices of freshwater fish, delicately arranged in concentric circles, each one glistening slightly from a clear, viscous glaze. You can't smell anything yet, but everyone at the table has just gone quiet. You lean in. The scent is soft at first, grassy, clean. Then it deepens, a sour note, a trace of something mammalian. You blink. The eunuch confirms it. The marinade includes yak's milk and the salt of its tears. Quirky fact, the origin of this dish is traced to the far western regions of the Ming Empire. Yaks, when stressed, produce a kind of salty, mineral-rich tear that nomadic cooks allegedly harvested. Most historians suspect this is poetic metaphor, but the kitchen tonight? Not metaphorical. You take a bite. The texture is like chewing a ghost. The flavour dances between tart and smoky, then vanishes as quickly as it came. You swallow and sip tea, and somehow you feel more awake than ever, like your taste buds just returned from a pilgrimage. Beside you, someone coughs once, then says, delicate, introspective. Another guest echoes, a rare harmony of fish and grief. You suspect these people practice in front of mirrors. The emperor has not touched the dish, but he has allowed it to be served, which means it's a test, for you, for everyone. You pass, barely. Next arrives a surprise, fermented tofu stuffed into hollowed bitter melon, topped with dried plum powder. It's like someone captured the entire flavour spectrum of the human condition and injected it into a sponge. You don't hate it, you don't love it, you endure it. Across the hall, a man from the northern provinces laughs softly and reaches for seconds. Show off. A whisper circulates. Tonight's menu may have been inspired by a tribute collection from the imperial kitchens of Yunnan. That would explain the boldness, the fermentation, the subtle dare in every bowl. Historians still argue whether these dishes were included to honour regional cuisine or simply to provoke reactions. Some scholars believe the emperor enjoyed watching stiff officials sweat over sour eel jelly more than the dish itself. You feel seen. Then, a cup of what looks like broth. Pale, slightly green. You take a sip. It's bamboo vinegar and aged garlic broth. There are no solids, just liquid. Pure, distilled sharpness. Your jaw tingles. Your ears pop. You suppress the instinct to flinch. The woman across from you exhales as though she's achieved enlightenment. Meanwhile, one unfortunate nobleman further down the table accidentally chokes on a fermented mustard root chip. It happens fast. One cough, then a second. He recovers quickly, but a eunuch appears beside him, gently offering a second napkin and an understanding glance that also says, "We're making note of that." You take another careful bite of something purple. It's sticky, chewy, vaguely sweet. You don't even ask. By now, questioning the ingredients feels like an admission of weakness, and then a glimmer of relief. Drunken plums, pickled in rice wine and osmanthus syrup. They're sweet, tangy, and softly alcoholic. They burst in your mouth like tiny fireworks of mercy. You savour it, letting the syrup wash away the ghosts of all that came before. Then you notice it. People are relaxing, not just because the fermented trials are mostly behind them, but because those who made it this far, they've proven themselves. The room feels a touch looser. Conversations flow slightly faster. Chopsticks click with less precision and more ease. Even the music shifts, now a gentle drum rhythm, steady, heartbeat-like. The dancers have returned, robes swirling like petals on the surface of wine. One twirls past with a ribbon shaped like a crane in flight. You glance up toward the dais. The emperor lifts a spoon, just once. The hall quiets in recognition. He takes a bite of the yak's tear marinated fish, and nods, just once. And the hall exhales. You've just survived fermented fish in yak's tears and somehow earned an approving nod from the Son of Heaven himself. Not directly, of course. You wouldn't dare dream that high. But it was in your direction. That counts for something. Probably. And now the tempo changes. It's subtle at first. The servers move more swiftly. The music lifts into a higher key. Conversations carry just a bit further. The air, once heavy with formality, now vibrates with a cautious energy. You've entered what seasoned guests refer to privately as the sorting phase. It's not about taste anymore, it's about position. A fresh round of food arrives, delicate tofu cubes, deep fried to perfection, and dusted with powdered shrimp and osmanthus pollen. Crisp, aromatic, and just the right amount of showy. You pop one in your mouth, savouring the crunch and brace for what comes next. Because now, the hierarchy asserts itself, not just in robes or seat placement, but in temperature. Yes, rice temperature. You look down. Your bowl of jasmine rice just placed before you by a kneeling server is steaming. Hot, fragrant, perfectly fluffed. You smile faintly. Then you glance at the rice of the man beside you, lukewarm. Not unpleasant, but noticeably cooler. You file that away. The room, if you know how to read it, is stratifying in real time. Those with hotter dishes, more delicate portions, or earlier service, rising stars. Those with clumsier servers, lukewarm soup, or slower wine pours, cautionary tales. Historians still argue how deliberate this practice was. Some claim the temperature disparity was purely logistical. Massive palace kitchens couldn't possibly serve 300 guests evenly. Others insist it was intentional, a quiet message encoded in heat and pacing. You lean into your bowl, warm, sweet with chestnut, soft with a hint of mushroom. You've passed another invisible test. Another dish follows. Red braised lion's head meatballs, huge delicate things made of minced pork and crab, gently simmered in a rich broth. Each is served in an individual jade bowl. Yours is flawless. The garnish, a spiral of carrot and scallion, is folded like a blooming chrysanthemum. The man 2 cushions down, his garnish has wilted. You're not supposed to notice. You definitely notice. As the dishes parade forward, the signs become clearer. The chopstick upgrades, the fabric napkins, some silk, some cotton, the number of servers per guest, the quality of the wine, even the porcelain glazes shift. Yours now shimmers with faint gold leaf at the rim. The bowl 2 places over, plain blue and white. You realise what's happening. This isn't a meal, it's a recalibration. The emperor is watching, not just who can survive jellyfish pudding or rhyme under pressure, but who navigates subtlety, grace, and unspoken cues, and who does not. Then comes the entertainment interlude. Not dancers, not singers, a recitation. An old man stands, robe simple, hair long and white, hands trembling just slightly as he lifts a scroll. A poet, or maybe a scholar actor. His voice is soft but precise, slicing through the room like a bamboo blade. He speaks of rivers at twilight, of plum trees blooming during drought, of a fox who dreamt he was a man and awoke to find himself at a banquet. The room listens, rapt. Even the emperor leans ever so slightly forward. Then comes applause, not with hands, but with fingertip taps on porcelain. You join in. The sound is like rain on glass, gentle, uniform. You're still part of this rhythm. But then, suddenly, someone moves too fast. A courtier near the eastern wall stands. Too quickly. His cup tilts. Wine spills across the lacquered table. A servant lunges to catch it with a cloth, but it's too late. The spill soaks into a painting of cranes embroidered on the table runner. Silence. You glance at the emperor. Still. Expression unreadable. The courtier bows deeply. Lower. Lower still. He mutters something about apologies and plum blossoms. His voice is steady, but the sweat on his neck glistens under the lanterns. A eunuch whispers something into the ear of a secretary. A scribe makes a note. That's all. He won't be dragged out. Not tonight. But you won't see him at the next banquet. Back to your plate. Tiny dumplings filled with shredded duck and pickled tangerine peel. Each is dyed a different shade of spring. Pale green, soft yellow, delicate pink. They're shaped like baby peaches. You eat one. The flavour bursts like a memory of joy. Then, a new complication. A server appears with an additional tray. On it, 3 sauces. You weren't told which to use. One is a dark soy reduction with black garlic. Another a floral vinegar with hints of chrysanthemum. The last, fiery red, flecked with what looks like crushed peppercorn and, possibly, gold leaf. You choose the middle one. Safe. Respectful. The woman across from you chooses the peppery one. Her eyes water slightly, but she doesn't flinch. Brave or reckless. The server bows faintly as if approving the boldness. You realise again that this is the banquet's true design. Layers within layers. Every bite a signal. Every sip a declaration. And now the emperor rises. Not fully, just a shift. But again, the room adjusts. Voices dim. Bowls are lowered. He leans toward one of his secretaries and speaks in tones too soft to hear. Then he gestures, and several attendants begin circulating with silver-plated trays, each holding a delicate blossom made of sugar and rice flour. These are huagao, flour cakes. They're a sign of favour. Not everyone receives one. You do. You stare at it. White petals dusted with cinnamon. A golden centre. It's warm. And suddenly you're not sure whether to eat it or frame it. You take one bite. Soft, sweet, a faint touch of rosewater, and the unmistakable taste of being seen. You bow silently toward the dais, because right now your rice is warm, your bowl is gilded, and your sugar flour is still intact. And for this moment at least, you are surviving the invisible battlefield of rank. You stare down at the hollow stalk of your sugar flour. It's mostly gone now. Only a few flecks of cinnamon-dusted rice flour cling to the edge of your plate. Sweetness still lingers on your tongue, and for the first time tonight, you feel something dangerously close to satisfaction. Naturally, this is when the sauce tester collapses. It's subtle, as far as dramatic faintings go. One moment, he's standing beside the emperor's table, porcelain spoon poised over a bowl of winter melon broth. The next, he wobbles slightly, drops the spoon with a delicate clink, and crumples sideways in a whisper of silk. Gasps echo across the hall like wind through reeds. One of the flutists misses a note. The room freezes, except for the eunuchs. They are prepared for this. 2 of them sweep forward, quick, quiet, synchronized. They catch the man before he hits the floor and vanish behind the golden curtains with the efficiency of stagehands during a costume change. In their place, a new tester steps up. He's younger, paler, possibly shaking, but still standing. You can't help but wonder what was in that broth. Historically, sauce testers, or taste guardians, were often prisoners, servants, or low-level attendants rewarded for obedience with the honor of risking sudden, delicious death. It wasn't just about poison detection. It was symbolic, reinforcing the Emperor's distance from mortal danger. The Emperor, by the way, has not blinked. He turns slightly and whispers to his secretary, who nods once and makes a neat stroke on a scroll. The Emperor then takes a small spoonful of the very broth and sips, calm, measured. He is declaring without words, "I fear nothing." The room exhales. Your next course arrives. Ironically, it's soup. You try not to overthink it. It's a double-boiled pear and lily bulb tonic, meant to soothe the digestion and calm the nerves. The flavours are gentle, floral, faintly sweet. You focus on the warmth, the simplicity, the fact that no one around you seems to be keeling over. Then a bowl of shark fin congee appears, thick, rich, full of long-simmered flavour and imperial luxury. You take a bite, aware of the implications. Shark fin was considered a delicacy, expensive, controversial and symbolic of rank. If it's on your tray, someone somewhere thinks you matter. You smile, faintly, just enough. But now you begin to notice something else. Not everyone is being served the same dishes anymore. The group far to your left receives pheasant with goji berries. The group to your right is offered a plate of braised tofu with preserved radish, more humble but elegantly plated. The centre cluster near the Emperor, however, they're being presented with grilled snow partridge in gold leaf sauce, served on cloisonné trays shaped like lotus leaves. The banquet has fractured. The illusion of shared experience, one meal, one court, is peeling back. Now it's about tears, access, intimacy. You've moved up a level, quietly, without fanfare. But the implications are everywhere. A scholar seated 3 cushions away lifts his bowl of congee and hesitates. He looks around, sees your shark fin, sees his absence of shark fin. His expression doesn't change, but his posture stiffens just slightly. You get it. Because this is the moment where the banquet stops being a celebration and starts being a scoreboard. The flavours are only part of the story. The real game is in what gets served and to whom. A new dish arrives. Ginseng-stuffed pigeon. Yes, stuffed. With steamed ginger, spring onion and slices of red date. It smells like ambition and ancient medicine cabinets. You dissect it carefully, aware that everyone's eyes are drifting more often to each other's trays than their own. Then the Emperor gestures again. A new scroll is unrolled beside him. Not poetry, not ritual. The name Scroll. Your heartbeat slows. This is the part of the evening where awards, appointments, or dismissals might be hinted at. Nothing formal, no declarations, just names. Read aloud, sometimes followed by a toast, sometimes just followed by silence. The secretary clears his throat. In the matter of provincial assignments, and suddenly, every person in the hall forgets what they were eating. Names are spoken, slowly, one at a time, some with added notes, commended for service, to be reassigned, invited to court again. Others are simply said and left to hang. Your name is not called, which is good, or bad, or safe. Historians still argue whether appearing on this list meant anything definite, but the tension it caused, very real. One guest at the back drops his chopsticks. They roll. No one retrieves them. The list ends. The Emperor sips wine. The conversation resumes awkwardly. You return to your food, a delicate tofu pudding with honeyed lotus seed. It's warm, soft, gentle. A peace offering after the silent terror of the name scroll. The guest beside you, our bamboo chopstick friend, leans slightly away. Better to eat quietly than to hear your name too loudly, he says. You nod. Still chewing. Next up, a surprise. You're presented with a single quail egg, lacquered in black vinegar and wrapped in a steamed spinach leaf. It rests on a carved jade spoon. Symbolism alert. The egg is wholeness, the leaf, renewal. This is a ritual reset. A symbolic palate cleanse after the list. You eat it in one bite. It tastes modest, comforting. The Emperor rises, not fully, just enough. He stands, then returns to his seat, drawing the gaze of everyone in the room. A signal. The performance continues. A new musician takes the dais. He holds a flute carved from bone and begins a soft, almost mournful tune. It sounds like wind across a snowy field. Behind him, a scroll is unfurled, a painting of plum blossoms in moonlight, inked in a single continuous stroke. You sip your tea, and wonder if the next dish will be food, or a message. Because here, at the heart of the banquet, every bite, every bowl, every breath could mean something. And if it doesn't, it still matters that you act like it does. The mournful tune from the bone flute drifts like early morning fog over the banquet hall, and you're beginning to feel floaty. Not drunk, not quite, but light, detached. Your limbs are loosening under the wine. Your mind, however, must stay razor sharp. Because now comes the part of the evening known only half-jokingly as the intellectual ambush. A eunuch glides past your cushion with a small box. It lands gently in front of the scholar seated 2 places to your left. Everyone watches. He opens it. Inside, a poem scroll, half unrolled, a brush, and a challenge. Tonight it seems the Emperor has chosen drunken calligraphy games. This tradition, equal parts performance, pressure, and polite sabotage. You're handed a brush and a task: compose a poem, finish a line, or recreate an ancient character using ink and grace, while sipping wine, after 20 courses, with everyone watching. The scholar receives a prompt, a line from an ancient Tang poem about autumn wind and homesickness. He must complete it eloquently with brush in hand. He bows, dips the brush into ink and begins. His hand wobbles, not terribly, but enough. He writes, leaves fall not in sorrow, but longing. A few guests nod politely. One claps faintly. The Emperor offers no reaction. Then, to your horror, the eunuch turns toward you. Of course. A black box appears at your side. The server bows low. Inside, your own scroll, your own brush, a prompt written in dark red ink. The moon reflects the banquet's quiet flame. Your task? Finish the line, in calligraphy. While people very important to your continued survival watch from lacquered thrones, you pause, sip wine, feel the brush in your fingers. You write, as whispers climb the plum-glazed air. It's risky, abstract, a little indulgent. You offer the scroll with both hands. A moment of silence, then a clink of appreciation. Someone taps their cup against a plate. A whisper of approval floats from somewhere behind a fan. You spot the Emperor's head tilt half an inch your direction. His eyes lower, not in disapproval, but in that unreadable gaze he reserves for consideration. You survive the ambush. The scroll is taken. The game moves on. Another guest receives a completely different challenge. Write your name upside down, in mirror script, with a single stroke. That one ends in laughter. Gentle, forgiving. The kind of laughter that means, you tried. You're grateful that wasn't your fate. And just like that, the mood lifts. Calligraphy games serve a specific purpose here. They reset the energy. They allow guests to show not just cleverness, but poise. It's not about winning. It's about how gracefully you can fail in front of the Son of Heaven. Your next dish arrives as if on cue. A steamed bun filled with jujube paste shaped like a scroll, with the characters for peace and longevity stamped on top in edible gold ink. You almost laugh. Even the bread is in on the symbolism. You take a bite. Warm, soft, sweet. A small reward. The music shifts again, this time livelier. Flutes are joined by strings, and somewhere in the back a slow drum beat emerges, soft enough not to alarm, firm enough to wake the sleepy. Because now the wine returns, and not just any wine, chrysanthemum wine. Pale, honey-coloured, infused with the petals of the autumn flower and said to stave off aging and misfortune. Served in slender porcelain cups painted with moon rabbits and clouds. The server pours, you sip, and instantly you understand the danger. This wine is smooth, deceptively gentle, the kind that loosens tongues and unravels restraint without warning. You glance around and see it beginning already, smile stretching wider, laughter coming quicker, fans fluttering not just from heat, but from delight. A minor noble near the curtain tells a pun so dreadful it almost gets a reaction from the Emperor, something about geese and tax reform. A eunuch coughs politely into a sleeve. Another guest, now clearly tipsy, attempts to rhyme jade with paid and ends up stuck in a 4-line loop of imperial compliments that trails off into mumbled adoration. You sip slowly, pace yourself, This stage of the banquet isn't about indulgence, it's a trap disguised as revelry. Too much wine, and you slip. Too little, and you seem aloof. Historians still argue whether chrysanthemum wine was truly medicinal, or simply used as an elegant excuse to inebriate the lower tiers of guests into embarrassing themselves. You spot one such embarrassment now, a younger court official gesturing with his chopsticks as he attempts to reenact a military maneuver, using duck legs. His neighbour is smiling too hard. A eunuch whispers something, and the duck-leg general's movements slow, then still. He understands. This is not that kind of party. Then, a surprise. The emperor speaks, not to you, not to the crowd, but to a single woman seated just 2 cushions down, dressed in subtle violet, with her hair arranged in a simple yet perfect coil. She bows, says a few words. Everyone strains not to eavesdrop, but of course they do. You catch a phrase, something about orchid blossoms and clarity of spirit. Her bowl is refilled immediately. You glance at your own, still half full, a good sign. The servers are monitoring the emperor's eye movements now. If your bowl goes empty and isn't refilled, that's a problem. A fresh tray arrives, thin slices of pickled plum wrapped in rice paper, each arranged like a tiny scroll. A final tribute to poetry. You eat one slowly. It puckers your mouth gently, then fades into sweetness. Then comes a soft clinking sound. Toasts. The wine is flowing now, and with it the ritual of shared words. Not just formal ones, playful toasts, clever ones, wordplay, riddles. You listen as one man offers, "To the moon's reflection in a bowl of soup, may neither ever be stirred too harshly." A soft chuckle follows. Another responds, "To the duck who learns to swim backward, it dines longer before reaching the chopping block." Bolder, riskier, a few winces, then eyes turn toward you. You raise your cup, smile, and offer, "To the scroll that writes itself, may we never notice the ink on our hands." You sip. The woman in violet raises her fan in amusement. The older official with the bamboo chopsticks taps his porcelain. Even the emperor, well, he doesn't smile, but he lifts his cup. And in this hall of judgment, poetry, and duck-leg diplomacy, that might be the closest thing to affection you'll ever get. You swirl what remains of the chrysanthemum wine in your porcelain cup, watching the yellow petals drift like lazy snowflakes. The warmth has reached your fingertips now, and the clatter of nerves from earlier has melted into a slow, syrupy buzz. Around you, the energy shifts again. We're in the soft spiral of the banquet. Post-poetry looseness, as they say. That fragile window where everyone's still technically refined, but the seams of composure are beginning to show. Carefully. The man across from you, previously a quiet model of decorum, is now chuckling into his sleeve. His face is flushed, his fan unsteady. Another guest begins humming along with the guzheng music, unaware or unconcerned that he's a few notes behind. You sip again, a little slower this time, because you've reached the dangerous sweetness phase. That's what seasoned courtiers call it, when the wine tastes friendlier than it should, when eyes begin to linger longer, when servants pretend not to hear half whispers exchanged behind painted fans, and when secrets, long wrapped in silk and silence, begin to flutter into the air like startled moths. A new course arrives, plum blossom rice cakes, small and fragrant, layered with red bean paste and steamed in bamboo moulds shaped like flowers. Each one bears an imprint, poetic characters pressed in gold leaf. Yours reads, "Stillness." You bite into it. It's warm, soft. It sticks to your teeth in a way that feels oddly comforting. The woman in violet leans toward her table-mate and whispers something. The man next to her snorts quietly, quickly muffling his reaction with a sip of wine. You're sure you weren't meant to hear, except that's the point now. This is the time of strategic slippage. Truths begin to arrive as jokes, as riddles, as half-tipsy observations that somehow carry the weight of decisions made behind doors you'll never be allowed near. Someone murmurs, "Too many dishes tonight. The chef must be angling for reassignment." Another responds, "To the capital or to the countryside?" No answer, just laughter. Another guest raises a toast, "To the eunuch who never blinks and the scroll that never sleeps." Everyone chuckles politely, except the eunuch in question, who adjusts a tassel on his sleeve and pretends he's not writing something down. Historians still argue whether these banquets were carefully stage-managed affairs or semi-controlled chaos fueled by fermented rice. The truth? Probably both. The palace never wasted a moment to gather information, especially when people stopped watching their own mouths. And now yours is a little looser too. You catch yourself humming along with the music. You pick up another rice cake without even pretending to wait for the person next to you. Your shoulders ease just slightly. This is how the banquet lulls you. You're offered mandarin orange sorbet, served inside the peeled orange itself, frosted with sugared snow. It's icy and bright, a jolt of sharpness after the mellow rice wine. You want to thank someone, but there's no one nearby with a free ear. Across the room, a cluster of minor officials are clearly mid-gossip. You hear fragments. He actually brought his concubine to the audit. 6 crates of lychees, and not one arrived ripe. I hear the poet is not really blind. One of them catches your eye and lifts his cup in a slow, looping toast. It might mean, well done, or it might mean, we're watching. You return the gesture. With this crowd, it's safest to assume both. Then someone, no one important, just important enough, begins telling a story, loudly. It's a parable. Something about a carp who tried to swim up a mountain, mistaking it for a waterfall. The moral keeps shifting depending on who interrupts. At one point it's about pride, then ambition, then fish who can't read. You smile, but don't laugh. That would mean you've chosen a side. Because in this stage of the banquet, the jokes aren't jokes anymore. They're veiled critiques, probes, invitations. You laugh with the wrong punchline, and suddenly you're standing too close to someone else's fall from grace. A dish floats by, candied kumquats with cinnamon and hawthorn strung together like tiny golden lanterns. They glisten under the lantern light. You take one. It's tart, spicy, and oddly nostalgic. The older man with bamboo chopsticks nudges your arm with his fan and mutters, "Watch the dancer." You look. One of the performers, previously a face in the background, is now dancing alone. Her robes shimmer like sunlit water. But it's her rhythm that draws your eye. It doesn't match the music. Not quite. It's deliberate. A secret code, perhaps. An old story told through movement. The Emperor's gaze follows her. No one speaks, but the hall tilts just slightly toward her steps. You return your attention to your plate, pretending you saw nothing. Because here, even a dance could be a message. Quirky tidbit. In some Ming court records, dancers were used to subtly deliver political signals, through foot patterns, through the colours of their fans, even through how many times they twirled before a bow. One dancer's 3-step swirl in 1426 was apparently enough to trigger the replacement of a regional governor. Possibly a coincidence, probably not. The music softens, the dancer exits, and the guzheng begins again. A server appears with a fresh pour of wine. You shake your head, declining. They pour it anyway. This is not a suggestion. This is the final lap of the wine ritual. The polite rule, 3 sips. The real rule, as many as your dignity can withstand without becoming anecdote-worthy. You take 1 sip, then another. The man beside you raises his cup. To those who survived the fermented fish, you clink gently. To those who haven't realised they're still being tested, another smile. This one, slightly more genuine. The Emperor watches, always watching. But for now, you're still upright. Still smiling. Still steering your words with care. And in a banquet like this, that's as close as you get to victory. You shift slightly on your cushion. Not enough to call attention. Just enough to let the blood return to your feet. Your knees have been folded for so long they might qualify as a form of early Ming torture. But movement is dangerous. Too much, and you risk being noticed. Too little, and you stop feeling your toes. Luckily, the next course demands attention. Braised turtle in lotus sauce, served in its own shell no less. Nestled in carved wood trays and garnished with crisped chrysanthemum petals, it's a dish that radiates slow-cooked importance. The meat is tender, rich, gelatinous. The sauce smells faintly of star anise and long conversations. You pick up your gold chopsticks, scoop a portion, small, respectful, and take a bite. You're instantly aware that you're now participating in a centuries-old etiquette minefield. You chew, you nod, you raise your eyebrows just slightly in that quiet gesture of polite astonishment. Because everyone is watching. This dish, this turtle, is a known etiquette trap. It requires the perfect response. Reverence, not gushing. Enthusiasm, not gluttony. No one knows exactly when this started, but for generations the turtle dish has been the moment when careers quietly tilt. Praise it too much, and you're suspected of sarcasm. Ignore it, and you insult the kitchen, and potentially the emperor himself. One official in 1432 was demoted 2 ranks for complaining that turtle was a little chewy. Another in 1447 gained a promotion simply by writing a short poem about its wisdom-infused marrow. You consider writing a poem, but you settle for a subtle hum of contentment and a second, smaller bite. A eunuch standing nearby inclines his head. He saw, he noted it. The guest beside you makes a mistake. He glances at the dish, makes a face, tiny, fleeting but real, and sets down his chopsticks too quickly. The woman in violet catches it. Her eyes flick to the emperor. Just once. No action is taken. No word is spoken. But the guest's tray is cleared just a little faster than the others. His wine isn't refilled. You chew slower now. Next dish. Steamed crab in ginger rice wine served in delicate ceramic bowls painted with red cranes. The shell is cracked for you, courtesy of the kitchen, revealing tender white flesh soaked in a fragrant broth. It's delicious. Easily the best thing you've tasted all night. But you don't say that, because this is where everything you say can be used as a reference point. That crab, it was the highlight, but so was the turtle. But what about the peach blossom sorbet, or the duck carved like a peony? Praise becomes currency. Every compliment now echoes into scrolls, reports, and conversations you'll never hear. So you say nothing, you just eat. And this restraint, that is the performance. Then comes a brief pause. The music stops. Servers stand still. The lanterns flicker like they've been told to wait. The emperor clears his throat, and then, for the first time tonight, he speaks to the room. Let the banquet continue with joy and silence. 10 words, no more, but the impact is seismic. Everyone bows slightly. The music resumes, a bit slower now, more thoughtful. The tone has shifted. It's not celebration anymore. It's introspection, and perhaps warning. Because here's the thing, when the emperor says silence, he doesn't mean complete silence. He means be quiet enough to hear what matters. So the next few courses arrive with almost no conversation. Just faint clinks of porcelain, soft chewing, the delicate whisper of silk against cushions. You're served tea-smoked tofu cubes, each one garnished with a single red pepper sliver and dusted with powdered seaweed. You chew slowly. They taste like secrets. Like late-night walks along palace walls, a bowl of clear bamboo fungus soup follows. The broth is clean, light, but strange. There's something elusive in it, like memory. You sip, and suddenly, you're thinking about things you haven't thought about in years. Childhood, a specific summer wind, the way pine trees smell in rain. You glance around. Others seem lost too. That's the power of this stage. Reflective cuisine. The kitchens time it precisely. After the jokes, the wine, the poetry games, now comes the phase of internal unravelling. No one warns you. No one explains. The food does the work. Then a new ritual begins. Guests are invited, quietly, one at a time, to offer a word, just one word, spoken aloud, in front of everyone. A word to describe the banquet, or the season, or the emperor. Interpretations vary. Responses become miniature riddles. A merchant says, aspiration. A military official says, stillness. A young poet says, vapor. You rise. Your knees crack. Your spine stretches. You look toward the dais, then down to your cushion, and you say, reverberation. The word hangs in the air for a moment, like steam above tea. You sit. Someone taps their cup. The emperor doesn't react, which means it landed well. Quirky tidbit. During one Ming banquet, a visiting monk offered the word broom. When asked to elaborate, he simply smiled and said, for sweeping away unnecessary thought. The emperor promoted him the next week. The guest next to you stands and says, salt, bold. The woman in violet rises. Her word, ember. It hits like a bell. You're not sure what it means, but you feel it. The emperor inclines his head. A servant scribes it into a scroll. The food returns, one final trial before the next shift. Fermented black garlic and duck liver custard. Small, dark, rich. served in spoons shaped like lotus seeds. You eat it. It tastes like dusk folded into velvet. You smile, just slightly, and you survive another course in the most dangerous room in the empire. You lean back ever so slightly and let the taste of duck liver and black garlic settle across your tongue like the end of a long sentence. It's earthy, deep, a little melancholy. Exactly right for this hour, because now, though no one says it, you've entered the most peculiar phase of the banquet. The ghost course. No fanfare, no announcement, but the signs are clear. The lanterns dim a fraction, the servers move quieter. The music, if you can call it that, is now a solitary zither string plucked with the soft cadence of dripping water. A new set of dishes appears. Not many, just 3. The first arrives on a tray carved with clouds, lotus root filled with glutinous rice, but dyed a strange bluish grey like ash before a storm. The server kneels before you, offers the bowl with both hands, and says nothing. You take it. The dish is cool, unusually cool. Not cold, but as though it's been resting in a quiet, forgotten corridor of the palace. You chew. It's sweet, soft, sticky. It tastes like memory. Around the room, no one speaks. You look up, and something is different. 1/3 of the seats are empty. You blink. They weren't occupied before. You're sure. You think. But now they're set. Bowls filled, chopsticks placed, wine poured. For whom? That's when it hits you. These aren't seats for guests. Not living ones anyway. They're offerings for the ancestors, for the departed. For those who, in the meticulous bureaucracy of the afterlife, still deserve a place at the table. This is the banquet for ghosts. Yes, this was a real thing. In the Ming Dynasty, it wasn't uncommon for court banquets to include a section for the dead. Symbolic plates laid out for emperors past, honoured ancestors, even fallen generals whose deeds merited eternal inclusion. The logic? To forget them would be a breach of cosmic harmony. And in a hall where harmony is law, even spirits get their soup. The next dish is delivered without eye contact. Black sesame buns, round and glossy, each with a tiny cut at the top, just enough to release the spirit, as some court manuals phrased it. You take one. It's heavier than it looks. Inside, warm paste, sweet, smoky, dense. You eat it in silence. No one lifts a cup. No one toasts. This isn't the time for noise. The woman in violet, who has not spoken in some time, lowers her eyes and presses her palms together once quietly. You do the same. The third dish arrives, moonlight jelly, made from agar and snow fungus, served in crystal bowls. It's almost translucent, flavoured faintly with pear and something faintly medicinal. The texture is ethereal. The taste? Like eating reflection. You realise something else. The emperor has not moved in several minutes. He sits perfectly still, his gaze lowered, his hands folded. In this moment he is not the son of heaven commanding attention. He is a grandson, a son, a link in the ancestral chain. And you're simply a witness. Around the room, candles are extinguished. Not all of them, just enough to shift the light. Make things softer, more uncertain. Somewhere in the back a bell chimes once. A deep tone, long, resonant, a marking of time, of presence, of absence. Then another tray arrives, but this one isn't for you. It's set down in the empty seat beside you, for a ghost. The bowl is filled, steamed sea bass with wolfberries and angelica root. The presentation is flawless. The chopsticks rest on a carved jade stand shaped like a lotus. The wine cup is full, and no one touches it. You look forward. You chew slowly. You say nothing, because the moment is sacred. Historians still debate the origins of the ghost course. Some believe it was ritualistic, rooted in Taoist rites. Others see it as a deeply Confucian gesture, honouring filial piety at scale. A few fringe accounts even claim the dishes were eaten later by specific servants, chosen for their purity. But tonight, the food remains untouched, and you understand. This course is not about taste. It's not about etiquette or poetry or performance. It's about memory. A pause in the imperial machinery, a whispered gesture across time. You lift your cup, not to drink but to raise it, just slightly, to someone, to anyone. Then lower it. No toast, no clink, just reverence. The zither stops. The servers begin collecting the ghost bowls. Gently, no scraping, no clattering. They move like shadows. One carries the untouched buns as though they weigh 100 pounds. The light returns gradually, a few candles relit. The guzheng strums a new chord. Life resumes. You find yourself blinking, readjusting to reality, to movement, to the weight of your own breath. The emperor speaks again. 3 words softly, "Let joy return." And it does. The servers smile. The wine flows once more, and the guests, still quiet, begin to eat again with a kind of cautious relief. The banquet continues, but the ghosts have been fed, and they leave no mess behind. The return to brightness is delicate, like emerging from a dream you're not sure you are ready to leave. The ghost course lingers in the air, invisible but unmistakable. You feel it in the back of your throat, that silence-laced sweetness of moon jelly and ancestral reverence. But no one dares mention it, because now the tone has shifted again, subtly, artfully, with the grace of a fan closing in slow motion. This is the course of edible metaphors. The first sign, the dish is shaped like a deer. Not made from deer. No, it's a dumpling. Cleverly folded, pinched at the haunches, curved at the neck and dyed brown with bean paste so it looks like a delicate little fawn curled in repose. You stare at it. You're not supposed to eat it yet. This, after all, is not just food, it's a message. You glance around. The emperor receives his first. His rests on a plate shaped like a pine forest. The guest beside you receives a phoenix-shaped pastry. Another gets a lotus leaf carved from taro root. Someone else, a crab holding a scroll in its claw. What is this? It's the secret course, where every guest is served a unique dish, designed, selected and prepared as a symbolic message, a culinary fortune, a polite nudge, a whispered truth. And no one knows if they should take it literally. You pick up your deer. It's warm, light, slightly fragrant with lemongrass. Inside, mushrooms, chestnut, and a little minced chicken. But that's not the point. You try to remember. What does the deer mean? Longevity? Tranquility? Or isn't it also the animal that guides lost souls home? Oh, you eat it anyway, one slow bite at a time. Historians still argue whether this course was truly personalised or whether guests simply believed it was. Did the palace kitchens have dossiers? Did they spy on your poetry? Were these choices orchestrated by ministers behind fans? Or were you just reading too much into a meat-filled metaphor? Then again, in a court where silence can be a compliment and turtle soup can ruin your career, why wouldn't they use food as communication? The guest across from you receives a dumpling shaped like a tiger. She eats it in 2 clean bites, like it didn't just imply military promotion or ruthless efficiency. Power move, you admire her. A servant steps in and clears the deer's plate. In its place, something new. A platter of grilled riverfish, arranged in a sweeping curve topped with chrysanthemum petals and surrounded by sauce trails that resemble the bends of a river. Subtle, poetic. But again, not just about taste. This dish is meant to be read. The message? Perhaps, go with the current. Or, be flexible in unfamiliar waters. Or maybe just, don't swim upstream when the emperor is watching. You take a bite. The fish is sweet and smoky, the skin crisp. You follow the shape of the sauce with your chopsticks, playing along with the idea that you understand. Because that's what this part of the banquet is, performance layered atop performance. Then, dessert? No, not yet. What arrives next is a puzzle, almond jelly cubes stacked in the shape of a pagoda. Between each cube, tiny slices of candied ginger and green plum. It wobbles slightly as it's placed before you. You hesitate. Do you dismantle it? Or do you let it stand? The man next to you, old, silent, unmoving, eats only the top cube and bows toward the structure. You do the same. It's soft, delicate, just sweet enough to whisper civilization rather than shout sugar. You leave the lower tiers untouched, respectfully. Then comes something strange. A leaf, just one, placed on a tiny plate, still dewy, perfectly green. You blink. The eunuch whispers, "Olive leaf, picked at first light." You nod as if you know what that means. You don't, but you eat it anyway. Bitter, almost astringent. The texture is like chewing a poem that ends in confusion. Across the hall, a man receives a bowl of soup with a single, floating petal and a pearl-sized dumpling. He eats only the dumpling, leaves the petal untouched. A statement? A misstep? Nobody reacts. But a servant takes longer than usual to clear his bowl. Another dish? Miniature steamed buns shaped like the characters for wind, forest, and stillness. You receive only one. Yours says, stillness. Same as the rice cake earlier. Twice now. You pause. 2 dishes bearing the same message. That has to mean something. You consider the possibilities. You're being advised to keep quiet, to observe, to wait. Or maybe it's a compliment. Stillness, as in balance, grace, poise, or a warning. Do not stir the pond. You bow slightly to no one, just in case someone's watching, which of course they are. Then comes the drink. Pear blossom wine, clear and floral, served in tiny glass cups that look like they were blown from dew. You take one sip and feel your chest loosen. It's barely alcoholic. Mostly fragrance, but powerful. Because it comes just before the moment everyone dreads. A eunuch steps into the centre of the hall. He holds a scroll, not a poem, a list, not of names, but of dishes. This is the public annotation phase, where select dishes from the night are praised aloud. A tradition that began under the Xuande emperor, supposedly to elevate imperial taste and give subtle signals of favour. It is not, of course, about the food. The eunuch begins, "The emperor commends the clarity of the moonlight jelly." You feel a ripple. That dish was served during the ghost course. Someone across the hall bows just slightly. Perhaps the chef who oversaw it. The presentation of the deer-shaped dumpling is deemed harmonious. You blink, your dish, you don't move, but your stomach flips. The scroll continues. The almond pagoda shall be noted for structural sincerity. You hear one stifled cough of amusement, possibly from the woman in violet. And then the eunuch says, "The character stillness has appeared with intentional rhythm." You go cold, not because it was your bun, but because it was your second. A theme is being built, around you or about you. You keep your face neutral. You lower your eyes, you sip your wine. The scroll is rolled up. Applause, soft, precise. The tap of fingernails on porcelain follows. The music resumes, the dishes continue, and you're now part of the metaphor. The applause fades, if you can even call it that. Just a breath of acknowledgement, fingertips brushing cups and bowls. You sit still, your stillness bun now a quiet prophecy resting in your memory. Your dear dumpling halfway to legend, and the almond pagoda a structural triumph you'll never look at the same way again. And then, without any warning, boom! A concussive crack of light explodes above the courtyard. Lanterns flutter, tea ripples, chopsticks pause mid-air. You flinch, along with half the room. Because even here, with all the elegance and coded gazes and gold chopsticks, the emperor still enjoys fireworks. Another blast streaks across the sky. Gold, then green. Then a wheel of violet sparks spins high above the palace roof like the eye of some startled dragon. Guests recover quickly. Some chuckle. Others politely admire the sky with curated expressions of awe. But you're 9 years old again, staring open-mouthed into the night. You weren't expecting this. No one told you the banquet included explosions, but of course it does. This is the Ming Dynasty. They invented gunpowder. Why wouldn't they light up the heavens between courses? Quirky historical tidbit. Fireworks were more than entertainment. They were divine punctuation. They scared away bad spirits, marked celebratory peaks, reinforced the emperor's cosmic alignment. Also, they just looked cool. Another flash. This one shaped like a lotus, then a cluster of bursts like silver chrysanthemums tumbling through smoke. You glance at the emperor. He's not smiling, but his eyes reflect the colours. That's enough. Then the music returns, faster now, keeping pace with the rhythm in the sky. Because yes, the fireworks are timed to the banquet. As the next course is served, a fresh cascade of light fans out above you. You look down to find a dish that glows, quite literally. Glazed eel tarts, brushed with honey and rice syrup, then dusted with crushed pearl. They shimmer under the torchlight, casting faint sparkles across your plate. They look like meteors. They taste like caramelized salt and silk. You chew slowly, eyes still adjusting from the glare outside. You can't help but wonder how much this cost. The fireworks, the pearl dust, the silence required to make it all feel effortless. Then again, this is the Ming court. Showing restraint is an insult. Moderation is for people who don't control empires. Next arrives a bowl of saffron rice sculpted into the shape of a mountain. Steam curls up its sides like morning mist. It's not just food, it's a landscape. And tucked into the base, a tiny grilled prawn. Alone. Deliberate. The only movement in the scene. You get it. You're supposed to be the prawn. You eat it with a kind of philosophical humility. Another firework bursts, this one a cluster of red peonies, and the hall murmurs again. This time not in surprise, but agreement. Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, it's extravagant. Yes, it's supposed to feel like the world is revolving around one man's meal. You sip your plum blossom wine, watching the firelight reflect in the surface. Another dish arrives, catching your attention just in time. Crystal noodles in iced chrysanthemum broth, chilled, clear, almost invisible. You raise your gold chopsticks and gently lift a bite. The noodles slide free with the ease of river reeds in moonlight. You slurp quietly. The chill hits your teeth. The flavour, barely there, floral, distant, with a hint of bitterness like a decision made too late. It's refreshing, but it stings. You glance again at the woman in violet. She's stirring her noodles into spirals, watching the reflection of the fireworks in her bowl. She hasn't spoken in some time. You begin to suspect she's enjoying this more than she lets on. Next to you, the man with bamboo chopsticks leans over just slightly. "In this court," he murmurs, "even the sky is edited." You smirk. Just a little, because he's not wrong. Then the servers bring out small lacquered boxes. Each guest receives one. Yours is black, inlaid with silver clouds and a single golden peach. You open it slowly. Inside, snow cakes. 3 of them, each the size of a coin, dusted with powdered sugar, filled with bean paste, and chilled until they melt on the tongue like whispers. But they're arranged in a triangle, and on the underside of the lid, painted in elegant brushstrokes, even winter carries flame. Another metaphor, another message. You eat one, sweet, cold, warming. It's an emotional paradox, engineered into food. And now the fireworks reach their climax, the music surges. Outside, a sequence of 20 bursts, each brighter, faster than the last, sets the courtyard aglow. Then, silence. A long, deliberate pause. You hold your breath. And finally, the last explosion. A golden dragon, its body spiraling across the sky, tail curling, head snapping in light. It hovers for a heartbeat, then vanishes. The crowd remains still for several seconds longer, not daring to speak first. Then, the emperor nods, and breathing resumes. The servers appear again. They move faster now. This is the wind-down phase. Dishes cleared, napkins replaced. A tea cart glides in, wheels wrapped in cloth so they don't make a sound. You're poured a cup of Longjing tea. Green, nutty, grassy. The taste of spring after fire. The heat brings you back down to earth. You survived the fireworks, you survived the metaphors, and your little deer dumpling, still remembered. The air is heavier now, not from smoke, though the last trails of fireworks still linger outside, but from the slow gravitational pull of finality. You feel it in the slight hush that settles after the last golden dragon fades from the sky. In the way the servers no longer glide but move with quiet efficiency, and in your own bones, which, frankly, feel like soup. This is the phase known to veteran courtiers as the long goodbye. And no, it's not a quick bow and a dash for the door. It's a ritual, a performance unto itself, one that must be executed with precision, grace, and the exact amount of humility. But first, your cue. A tray of farewell sweets arrives. On it, 3 items, each symbolic, each a subtle test of your ability to decode parting words without speaking any. First, candied lotus seeds served in pairs, symbol of purity, continuity. You pop one into your mouth. It's sweet with a slight crunch, comforting, a quiet, well done from the kitchen. Second, a single lychee, peeled and resting on a jade spoon. You're meant to eat it without lifting it. Just lean in, bite it. Gracefully. It's juicy and it threatens to dribble down your chin. You catch it with your tongue. Victory. Third, a folded pine nut pastry shaped like a fan, its folds intricately layered, its fragrance warm and spiced. You're not supposed to eat the whole thing, just break off one corner. Why? Who knows? But you do it anyway. A server removes your tray the moment your fingers lift from the pastry. That's the signal. Exit protocol has begun. A bell rings, soft, low, a note that vibrates somewhere in your ribs. The guests at the centre table begin their departure dance. It starts with 10 bows. No, not 10 bows total. 10 types, each with its own name, angle, duration, shoulder placement. You watch carefully as the first group performs them in perfect sequence. The respectful bend, the humble incline, the gratitude dip, the shadow salute, the three-pointed reverence. You try not to panic. You know maybe 4 of them. You will fake the rest with confidence and supple knees. Next, 4 poems. Each departing guest is expected to offer one, or rather one stanza, a couplet, often improvised, sometimes rehearsed. The first guest says, "Lantern smoke meets plum tree shade. My thanks stretch farther than the jade." Soft applause. Another bows and offers, "I leave the feast but carry flame. The turtle knew, and so must I." That earns a look from the emperor. Neutral, maybe amused, maybe not. Now it's your turn. You stand, you bow. Once, twice. You invent the rest mid-motion, then speak. "In silence fed, by moonlight stirred, I carry stillness like a word." There's a pause, then the faintest clink of cup on saucer. That's enough. Now comes the slow walk, not toward the exit. No, you walk sideways, left foot, bow, right foot, pivot, pause. Because turning your back on the emperor, forbidden, you must face him until you pass beyond the second lantern arch. Only then may you bow again and turn to leave. Of course, as you walk, you're also expected to offer 3 expressions of gratitude. To the emperor, to the banquet, to the kitchen, in that order. You speak quietly as you pass. To His Majesty, I offer breathless thanks. To the feast, a humble heart. To the hands unseen, I bow. You reach the arch, bow again. You turn, you walk, you do not run, though every part of your body would like to collapse into a nearby koi pond. Quirky tidbit. Some departing guests would intentionally walk slower to hint at reluctance to leave, hoping the emperor might summon them back for future honour. Others walked too slow and were politely escorted out with a smile and a permanently closed door behind them. You strike the middle ground, balanced, bowed, mostly intact. Then, a voice. The eunuch beside the exit calls your name, softly, formally. You freeze. Is it over? Or is there more? He steps forward and hands you something wrapped in silk, a departure favour. You bow again, more out of reflex than understanding. You walk a few more paces until you are officially beyond the main hall, only then do you open it. Inside, a small sachet of fragrant herbs, red silk, gold thread. Inside, a slip of paper with a single character. Jing, stillness. You exhale. They remembered. They're sending you out with the same word you arrived under. It's not a reward, it's a whisper, a nudge, a warning. You fold the silk, press it to your chest, and step into the corridor where the flickering torchlight feels oddly cold after the glow of the hall. Behind you, the banquet continues. Just a few more guests remain, and a few more verses to be spoken before the night ends. But you've made it. Through turtle traps and yak's tears, through deer-shaped dumplings and moon jelly, through poetry and parables and metaphors served in crystal bowls. You made it through the long goodbye, and now the night exhales around you like a tired dragon curling back into sleep. Outside the main hall, the air smells different. Fresher, yes, but also freer. The stillness isn't symbolic now, it's just quiet. You walk slowly down a corridor lined with carved wooden panels and shadowed lanterns. No music, no servers, just the faint rustle of your own robes. And then, like a whisper through silk, comes a familiar scent. Sesame oil, sweet bean, roast duck. You turn a corner and find a long lacquered table. No seating, no decorations, just a quiet spread of covered trays and bamboo containers. The leftovers table. You weren't told about this part. No one ever is. But here it is, waiting, quietly radiant under a canopy of moonlight and mosquito nets. This is where the myth of the Ming banquet and the reality of the hungry guest meet and nod to one another. Now, here's the catch. You can't just start grabbing dumplings like you're raiding a festival stall. No, this table has its own rules, its own silent hierarchy. The first thing you notice, every dish has been replated, artfully, as if auditioning for a second chance. Cold slices of tea-smoked duck fan out over plum sauce, miniature spring onion pancakes stacked like scrolls, moon jelly cubes in clear chrysanthemum broth, refloating for a quiet encore. You approach the table and pause. A server appears behind you. You didn't hear her approach. She gestures toward the table. "If you wish," she whispers, "but choose with care." You nod. Because this is not about hunger. This is another message. Taking food from the leftovers table implies something. Maybe humility, maybe appetite, maybe desperation. And if you take the wrong dish, one that was reserved for a higher tier guest, you could start a scandal, however quiet. You scan the offerings. The sweet lotus bun seems safest, symbolic, modest, elegant. You place it carefully into your silk sleeve pouch. A good choice. But then your eyes land on something strange. A single piece of fermented plum, resting atop a sliver of fried fish. It's unlabeled, not familiar, and no one else has touched it. Curious. You lean closer. There's a scent, sharp, almost citrusy, with a hint of smoke. You reach for it, and a low voice says, "Not that one." You straighten. The speaker is older, dressed plainly, but unmistakably a court official, possibly retired, possibly someone who once didn't listen to a warning like this. He nods toward a different dish, cinnamon-glazed taro wedges curled like tiny sails. "Safe," he adds. You take one. You chew. It's sweet, chewy, grounded, and you get the message. Some leftovers are traps. According to court gossip, and there's always court gossip, one guest once snuck a forbidden duck wing only to be demoted by morning. Not because it was the emperor's dish, but because the gesture said, "I know better than the rules." You sip from a bowl of cold oolong broth, served with floating rose petals. It's light, cleansing. And you realize it's not just for refreshment, it's for erasing the taste of the banquet, resetting your body, making sure you leave with a clean tongue. Smart. You finish your taro wedge and turn to go. But another servant steps forward with a satchel. "This," he says softly, "is for your return." Inside, neatly wrapped bundles of dessert biscuits, pickled ginger strips, and a small flask of osmanthus wine, all labelled in calligraphy so beautiful it could double as a love letter. And then, just as you're about to leave, a final gift is offered. Not food, a tiny scroll tied with gold thread. You unfurl it. One line, 7 characters. What is remembered does not spoil. No name, no signature, no context. Is it a proverb, a compliment, a gentle threat? Maybe all three. You tuck it into your sleeve and step back into the corridor where the lamps now burn low and the shadows walk beside you like old friends. Behind you, someone sneezes, quietly, followed by an overly loud cough. You turn just enough to see a cluster of departing guests hovering near the leftovers. One of them has already reached for the forbidden plumfish combo. You wince internally. Not your problem, not tonight. Then you hear a faint rustle, silk robes brushing against stone, and out of the corner of your eye a servant reappears with a scroll. It's blank. But you know it won't stay that way. Someone is writing down what was taken, and by whom. Quirky tidbit. Ming banquet leftovers were often more revealing than the main courses. They showed instinct, impulse, true rank, even unguarded gluttony. A dish could survive 10 courses only to ruin someone with a single midnight bite. You pass a stone guardian lion as you near the outer gate. It watches you with that expression only stone creatures have, knowing, unreadable, possibly judging your choice of taro. The moon is high now, the city is still, and in your sleeve the words, "What is remembered does not spoil." You don't know if that's a promise or a warning, but you carry it, just the same. You step beyond the last red archway, and just like that, the banquet is no longer a place you're in, but something you carry. The hush of the palace fades behind you, replaced by the soft crunch of gravel beneath your shoes. No more music, no drifting servers, no gilded dishes parading across lacquered tables, just you, a velvet night, and a stomach full of metaphor. The stars are visible now, something you hadn't realized you'd missed. Lanterns flicker on stone pedestals like fireflies tamed by protocol. You keep walking 1 foot at a time, careful not to disturb the contents of your silk sleeve, the sachet, the sweet bun, the tiny scroll that still whispers in your thoughts. You pause at a small gate. A guard opens it without a word. You bow slightly. He bows back. The exchange is simple, but significant. He saw you enter hours ago. He sees you now, whole and upright. That alone is its own unspoken achievement. You pass through. Ahead, your sedan chair waits, modest, clean, embroidered with plum blossoms. The bearers are resting on the ground, eating quietly from their own simple parcels of rice and bean paste. They nod as you approach. You nod back. No rank out here, just people and shared exhaustion. As you settle into the chair, a final sound echoes behind you. A gong, not loud, not grand, just 3 soft strikes. Dong, dong, dong. The official end of the banquet. You exhale, you're out. But not free, because now begins the retelling. Every guest will remember things differently. Some will forget what they need to forget. Others will rewrite moments before breakfast. A few will write verses that will be sung by servants, overheard by spies, and mysteriously make their way back to the ears of someone who matters. Your dear dumpling, already mythologized. Your stillness bun, probably a parable by morning. Even your decision to bow, twice instead of 3 times during the final exit, will be interpreted as either restrained wisdom or insufferable modesty. And that scroll. What is remembered does not spoil. You think about that. You think about it as the chair sways gently on its poles, carried through the dim alleyways that wind beyond the palace walls. You watch slivers of lantern light pass like moonbeams over stone. You feel the ache in your knees from kneeling too long on embroidered silk. But most of all, you feel the strange weight of survival. You went in a name on a list. You left with a story, maybe even a warning label. Quirky tidbit. One Ming-era diarist noted that guests often slept poorly after banquets, not from indigestion, but from the sheer effort of deciphering the experience. I dreamed I was still chewing turtle, he wrote, and in the morning I couldn't stop bowing. You smile at that. Because you understand now. A Ming banquet wasn't just food. It wasn't even just ritual. It was a maze, a mirror, a moving stage where every gesture, however small, left a trace behind. And though the chairs have been stacked, the scrolls rolled, and the sauces congealed, the real feast has only begun. It's the feast of recollection. The meal you'll keep chewing in your thoughts for days, weeks. And maybe, if you're lucky, or unlucky, others will be chewing it too. Long after the turtle's gone cold, your chair turns a corner. Ahead, the city is waking. A few candles flicker in upstairs windows. A dog barks in the distance. Somewhere an old woman stirs rice porridge, completely unaware that 37 dignitaries just tried to read the emperor's mood through bean paste and firelight. You envy her. Your chair slows. The bearers bow low as they set you down. You rise, sore but upright, and step onto the worn stone of your courtyard. You don't say anything, you just breathe. Because out here you can. Inside, a lamp flickers in your study. A clean scroll awaits. You may write nothing, or you may write everything, but one thing is certain. You'll never taste plum wine again without hearing a zither string echo through your memory. The banquet is over now, and so is the performance. Let the silk of the story loosen around your shoulders. Let the powdered gold settle to dust. Let the soft sounds of memory fold inward, like napkins gathered after a long and careful feast. You're no longer kneeling in a candlelit hall beneath the gaze of emperors. You're not holding chopsticks made of jade, or deciphering dumplings shaped like deer, or guessing the meaning of a single preserved leaf. You're here, lying down maybe, listening, definitely. Breathing in the gentle dark beyond the story. Let the flavours melt from your tongue as warm tea slides into quiet. Let your mind replay the softest moments. A moon jelly dissolving without a sound. A dancer's ribbon twisting like smoke. The echo of your own voice saying stillness in a room where everything was measured in glances. This was never just history. It was a dream carved into lacquer and lit by candlelight. And you walked through it, survived it, tasted it. Now you can let it go. Let your body soften, let your breath deepen. Let the memory of gold dragons in the sky flicker once, then fade. You've had enough for tonight. Enough pageantry, enough questions, enough story. Rest now, beneath a sky that doesn't need fireworks to feel immense. And if you dream, may it be of something simple, a single warm rice cake, and no one watching you eat it, 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 no one watching you eat